Welcome back to Not Your Practice Life podcast. I am your host, Michelle Urso, an accountability coach, life and relationship coach, and I am so excited to be here today with my guest and best friend over 16 years, Miss Mara Ahmadi. We are here to talk about addiction today because this podcast is going to talk about things that are near and dear to my heart and to people in my life. And hopefully it impacts you and touches some part of your life as well. Because across the globe, there are roughly 30 million people with an addiction. And in 2016, 626,000 Americans had a heroin addiction. And according to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, in 2021, 106,000 people died from a drug overdose. So I know this is a worldwide epidemic that, frankly, I don't think we talk about enough. So that's why I wanted to bring on this guest today, Miss Mara Ahmadi. She has been clean for over 8 years. She can roll herself in here.
Hi, guys.
We are in this dingy hotel room here in Connecticut. I'm up for military duty. And one of my favorite things about coming up for military duty is seeing Mara every single month. It's just a highlight of my month to see her. So,
and mine as well.
We decided to do a show today, which I'm super pumped about because this topic, like I said, is so important to me, so important to you, and why not talk about it? So tell me a little bit about, I know, but tell the audience a little bit about your past.
Well, like you said, I think it's a very important topic. I think even if you aren't going through addiction and you don't have a family member, I feel like everyone knows at least one person that goes through it, just like with cancer, now with COVID. It's so widespread that I just feel like everyone deals with it in a different way. My drug of choice was heroin, but smoking, alcohol, there's addictions that are all
you name it, it can be an addiction.
Yeah. There's
lottery tickets, alcohol, gambling, anything can be turned into it. Shopping addictions, addiction.
And I'm very nervous, but I do love to talk about not so much addiction, but recovery. And that's because I've lived, to be here and to talk about it. And I'm very lucky that I have. There's a lot of people that have not made it to the point that I'm at. It took a long time. It took many, many mistakes and relapses. And so my story, I don't know if you want me to get into my story.
Yeah, so we're going to dive deep. I'm just going to ask you questions. And then if there's other things that you want to add, please feel free to add whatever you want.
All right, I'm ready.
Perfect. So I want you to take me back to when it all first started. When was the first time that you used?
So great question. I battled with addiction my whole, I feel like, teenage life. I was addicted to cutting. I was self-injury with cutting, and I didn't know why I did that. It just was something that I could control. It was a release that I felt. And when I wanted to do it, I'd think about it all day. And then I had a plan and I would do it. I also was very experimental in high school. And it wasn't to be cool. I really loved doing drugs. I did coke and any drug you could think of, I tried, with the exception of heroin.
How old were you when you first started? Cutting was the first thing that you did?
Yeah, I would say I was about 13 when I started cutting. And that was all the way up to college. I was in college and I would do it. It just was like a release. But I didn't start drinking and smoking cigarettes till I was about 14. And then around 15, I started using harder drugs, such as ecstasy, cocaine, acid, things like that. But it wasn't an everyday thing. It was something all right, every weekend, I'm going to try this. I'm going to hang out with my friends. It was not something that I had to do every day, but I enjoyed doing it. And then it was after college, years later, I can tell you, I could pinpoint the day that I tried my drug of choice, which again is heroin. And it was a decision I made, and it started with a decision. And after that first decision, it was no longer a choice. And I think a lot of people have a hard time understanding that, and there's even people in my family that I've had to distance myself from because they believed this was a choice that Mara is doing. she's throwing away her life, she's destroying everything. But it just was no longer a choice. The minute I tried it, I felt myself going out of control, and that was it for me. And it just happened. And then it became a disease. I entered to I don't want to say the word.
Reiterate.
Yeah, let's cut that out.
Yeah.
And to explain a little bit more, I don't have any addiction in my family. I am the first one to be addicted in my family. So it definitely wasn't genetic for me as it is for some people.
Mhm.
It was purely, I tried it and my brain was wired to, I don't know. That part, I guess, is a mystery. I just loved it.
Yeah. And I can relate so much to that with the family members being like, this is a choice you're making, because I know my mom was struggling with breast cancer and my brother was deep into his heroin addiction. And I was bawling my eyes out looking at him like, can you please stop? Like, you're killing our mom, because she was going through chemo and radiation, and any amount of stress could potentially destroy her recovery process, right? And she was so stressed out with his addiction because he was so bad in it. And I just remember looking at him being like, why can't you just stop?
Right.
But you can't. And there's a fantastic article by Footprints to Recovery. I'll put it in the show notes. But they say like an opioid relapses are so high because of the chemical dependency that it has in your brain. So like any other disease, cancer, diabetes, addiction is a disease. It gets to that point where it just rewires your brain to that's all you can focus on all day, all night.
Right. And I think and that's why it's so important that we talk about it, because a lot of people don't understand that. And I've seen a lot of judgmental and hurtful things said about people who are in active addiction. And that's why I love talking. Someone once told me, oh, you glorify, you think you're cool and you talk about how you used to do drugs. But I don't talk about that. And I definitely don't glorify it. I talk about my struggle so that people can understand how to recover. And a lot of people don't. And it's hard. It's not easy. And I do wish that more people would be understanding and know a little bit more about it, which is why we're doing the podcast today about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was going to be one of my questions later on, was what do people misunderstand about you the most, do you think?
Well, I think now that I'm 8 years clean, I'll be 9 years clean in February. I think now people are shocked that they say, oh my gosh, you were a heroin addict. They're shocked. But I
totally
think,
see that.
yeah, because it took a long time for me to get here and many, many relapses. And if they had known me back then, I was a terrible friend, a terrible daughter, a terrible employee. Now I strive to be the best because I was so terrible. But
which I can say firsthand, because like I said, we've been friends for 16 years. So I've seen this girl go highs and lows, but she has been getting awards at work. My best friend will do anything for me. Like, there are very few people in this world I can say would drop anything at any moment to help me. And this girl is one of them. And it's just like amazing to see the ride and the wave that you've been on through life in the last 16 years. Because when I met you, 2007, you weren't
I was not.
I don't know if you were doing anything, but to me, it didn't seem like you were on anything.
I drank, of course, because it was college and I would still cut, but I was not doing, I had an experience when I was a sophomore in college. I had a death that we can touch upon later. When we talk about, getting to recovery, one of the things I had to address that, but, because of that death and that experience that I went through, I was adamant, like, I am not going to do drugs. I distanced myself from people who were doing drugs. And that's around the time I met you.
Yeah.
And just met a bunch of people. And I remember thinking like, wow, like these new girlfriends, like we're out having fun. We don't even have to drink. So I didn't start using my drug of choice until well after college. I was fully employed. It was quite a few years after.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you had done heroin before and then got clean.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Nope. That was
one
of the only drugs that I had not tried.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go back. So you started with cutting, then you started to dabble in just experimental stuff here and there in high school. And then take me through that road. So I know you started heroin after, but if you want to go through the process from high school to college and what happened.
Sure. So, I feel like a lot of people start using because they have gone through a trauma. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like people relapse a lot, is because they don't want to deal with that trauma through therapy, or they deal with the trauma and they're not well equipped on how to deal with it. And it's very overwhelming. One of the things in recovery that I've learned, and you'll know about this, I have to be in control. So that means I learned very quickly, this last 8 years, that I needed a schedule. So I needed to come home and walk the dog right away. I needed to eat dinner every night at 6:30. I needed to wake up every day, because those were all the things I could control, because everything is out of control in that serenity prayer, except the things you cannot change. That was very difficult for me. And so being structured and having a schedule was something that helped me a lot. And so when you deal with traumas in therapy, you start feeling out of control. You start feeling your emotions, and you don't really in my experience, those emotions really are a trigger for me. I don't like feeling bad. I want to feel numb. I don't want to think about it. I'm very lucky in a way that I'm able to pinpoint my traumas, whereas people, I feel like they're not quite sure what happened, like, oh, maybe something in childhood. I can tell you exactly in my life what happened and how that affected me and how it affected me becoming an addict. One of those things was, I was a sophomore in high school, and I was dating someone named George, who I had dated, and he was actually my first boyfriend, the person I lost my virginity to. Oh my gosh, I loved him so much. And I ended up meeting him again when I was in college, and we kind of got back together, and he was in recovery. He was paralyzed from the waist down because he had jumped from a building while high on heroin and became paralyzed. And I did not know anything about recovery at the time. I thought he could drink and we could have a good time, and I didn't think it was a big deal that we went out. So I enabled him a little bit in that way. And long story short, he ended up dying of a relapse, and I found him deceased, and it was very traumatic. And that kind of triggered me to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe he chose drugs over me. Our life was going to be beautiful together. And so that kept me off drugs for quite a few years. In between, things happened. A few traumas that I don't really want to get into, but so then a few years later, after graduating college, I was working full time, and I ended up meeting up with a different old boyfriend from high school. And he was also in recovery. So now at this point, is this like, I'm almost like drawn to this because of that trauma. I don't know if many people can relate to that, but it's almost like, okay, if your dad is a certain way, you kind of draw to that, whether it's toxic or not. And I think what happened with George drew me to, I don't want to say his name, but this person who,
Jeff.
we can call him Jeff. Great. This Jeff was in recovery, but not really. And the night that I first used heroin, he wanted to go and get it, and I was saying no, no, no. And I said, well, and this is probably something I've always wanted to say to George, then I'll do it with you. If it's so good and you love it more than me, then I'll just try it with you and we'll do it. And then my mind was going back to George, like, okay, well, he loved it so much that he died from it and he chose it, because I didn't realize it wasn't a choice. I didn't realize it was a disease. And then so that was the night that I used, and we went and got it. And that was like, I was like throwing up and wanting more. It was so bizarre.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I know you said that you, in a way, had enabled George.
Yeah.
Do you blame yourself for that?
Absolutely not, because the disease is so baffling and cunning, and it's powerful, and it's more than I could have ever done. It's absolutely, I there wasn't a thing I could have said, there
Right.
wasn't a thing I could have done. You need to have recovery and go through those steps yourself. Nobody can create your rock bottom for you. And I know I watch like the intervention shows where they try to create the rock bottom, coming from someone who was at rock bottom several times. Sometimes rock bottom isn't all, it just has to be you want to wake up and you want to live. And I was sick of waking up every day and not wanting to live. I didn't care if I lived or died.
Yeah.
I didn't care if I was homeless. I didn't care if I had to do things for drugs that were demeaning and terrible and things I would have never done before. All I cared was about that drug until I didn't, until I said I want to live.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. Like, do you remember that pivotal moment where you're like, I can't live my life like this anymore? Like, this is not my practice life. I cannot live like this anymore. If I continue to go down this road, I'm going to die.
Yeah, so there were so at one point I was homeless and I was living in my car, and I was it was so shameful. I had to go to like Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's to like shower, in the sink, and I knew people were looking at me. I knew I didn't look good, and people knew I was homeless. And it was very shameful, and I experienced things that I haven't even told you, my best friend, and I probably won't, because that doesn't matter.
You don't
It
need to,
happened. But I just remember I went to detox during the time I was homeless. I went to detox several times. And several times when I left detox, Jeff was waiting in the car with me with a loaded needle.
Like when you completed detox and you were released.
There was one time that he came into detox to convince me to leave. He actually got into detox, did all the paperwork just so I could leave, which is what I did. So several times, and then the minute I would leave, and I'm talking like 12, there's this it's called OTAPT, where the state sees that you've been on the detox methadone program so many times that I believe it's 12 a year, that once you're OTAPT, you cannot go back into detox on methadone. They would do it without like cold turkey.
Wow.
So I was at the point, and I don't quote me on the 12. It was somewhere around there, but there was a point in that 1 year that I was like OTAP, where they're like, we can't give you methadone. The state said that you've already filled your requirements. But I would go in and I would do the 7 days and I'd feel good, and I would leave, and he'd be right there at the doors waiting for me with a loaded needle. And it was so hard because my brain was wired that I need it. I'm a better person when I'm on it. But also I've lost everything anyway. So fuck it. My family's not talking to me. I have nowhere to live. I have no money. I've got my dog, which, thank God for her. She's like one of the reasons why I'm clean, and Jeff. And so it just was like, you have to want it. And yeah, and it didn't work for me until I went to a long-term facility, and until I realized he's going to kill me and I'm going to kill myself. And I'm not saying it was his fault. I could have said no. And I think about him every day, and I hope he's clean, and I hope he's doing well. But we had to separate. We had to go our separate ways.
Hard.
Yeah, we were engaged, and I had like the smallest ring that we ended up pawning, and everything that I had, I was gone. So yeah, I had to, there was really no rock bottom, because rock bottom you would have thought would have been bathing yourself in a Dunkin' Donuts bathroom and the cops knowing your name, that or the things that I had experienced. It just, for me, it just was like, I need to get better. And then it was 8 months clean, and then relapse, and then 4 months clean, and then relapse. And then I got to a year, and then relapse. So it was just learning how to stay clean. That didn't work this time. What's going to work this time? And really just not being discouraged, because it does take a long time, and the relapse rate is very high.
It is. It's extremely high. That article I was referencing before said that 40 to 60% of people who get sober will abuse substances again at some point in their lives. 40 to 60%.
Yep.
That's a lot.
The first time, I think I was like 8 months clean, and we actually all went to a birthday. I don't know if it was a birthday party. It was for a friend, Cret. And I was like, I'm 8 months clean. I haven't had any alcohol. I'm ready, because I never had a problem with alcohol. I could drink and know when to stop. And so I drank and I had a great time. And the party was in New Britain, and I lived past Hartford. We're from Connecticut, by the way. We're in Connecticut. It's a beautiful hotel room in Connecticut. But you had to drive through the city where I would get, and it was where I would get drugs. And it was when I was driving home, I had no thought in my brain about getting high. But then I passed the exit and my car just went off the exit. It was like, and then I was on the street and I was copping drugs. And it was never a thought like, I'm going to relapse. It was never a plan. It just was, I drank, I'm in a different mindset, and my mind just went straight off the exit, and I relapsed. And then I lied about it for a really long time. And so then I learned, okay, I can't drink. I cannot drink because I'm not in control. And so now, being almost 9 years clean, I don't say I'm sober, because I do enjoy adult beverages, but I enjoy them responsibly. It took me 5 years to learn how to have that first drink. I had to make sure that my keys were with somebody. I had to make sure I was with someone that knew.
Felt safe.
Right.
Yeah.
I think maybe I was with you the very first time I had an adult beverage, but there was a plan, and it was a clear cut, like, I'm going to have a drink. I'm going to have one drink. Here are my car keys. Don't let me, and it was,
and then talk to you on the way home.
Right. It was an accountability partner, and accountability is very important in recovery. And still to this day, like, I make sure that I'm not drinking all the time, and I'm responsible, and I'm with someone who knows that, but now it's not even a thought. It's getting, if it was in front of me, I'm sure I would, but it's not even a thought. It's like, I've learned how to relive my life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I went to a meeting one time with my brother, to an NA meeting, and I just remember these two brothers being there, one clean, one in recovery. And one of them said, I've been in recovery for 14 years and every single day is still a struggle for me. And that was really eye-opening for me, because not having an addiction, but loving somebody who does, I had no idea that it was like a lifelong battle.
Yeah.
I had no idea that it was a constant. Not that it's constantly coming to mind, because thankfully for you, it doesn't, but just that you have to have these practices in place to stop yourself if things get hard, or you start feeling emotions that you don't want to feel because you're so used to numbing them in the past.
But I think it doesn't come to mind every day the way that it used to, because I keep that structure and I keep my mental health in check, and I'm doing things every day that make sure that drugs is the last thing that's going to be on my mind.
That's amazing.
And it's hard in a relationship when you're so structured. I remember meeting my boyfriend, who I've been with for now almost 4 years, and he was like, you eat the same thing every Wednesday at 6:30. You eat the same thing every Tuesday. Yes. And now it's not so much, but it was like, I knew exactly what I was going to eat on a Wednesday night. And it was like, I didn't like to go out after work. If I had friends in town, it was like, oh, I don't think I can do it. And I've learned how to kind of overcome that as well. We still eat at the same time every night, though, but different foods. But
we're messing that up. It's shit.
But different food. So it's just a learning process, and it's hard. It's hard. And every day, I never thought that my life would be like this. And I know that some people call me successful. I'm a success story, and in a lot of ways I am. I died twice. I've got, I don't know if you can see them on the screen, but I've got a lot of scars up here, broken blood vessels from dying twice from getting CPR. And that way I'm very successful, that I'm here and I'm able to talk about it and I'm able to help people. But in a lot of ways, like, it's sad. Like, I lost 10 years of my life, and I'll never get those 10 years back. And had I not had that moment where I decided to go with Jeff, maybe my life would have been the same, and maybe addiction would have caught up with me eventually anyways, because I wasn't processing my feelings, or maybe my life would have been different. And I'm learning to not think about things like that, the what coulda, wouldas, because those will just depress you.
Yeah, 100%. And I was just looking because I just watched the Jelly Roll documentary. Do you know who Jelly Roll is?
I've heard about Jelly Roll.
Yeah, he's an amazing human being. So he was a full-blown addict, became rapper, now just entered the country music scene, which is why I know who he is, because I'm obsessed with country music. But he has a great story. And so he talks about that a lot. He was like, I wrote it down because it just hit me pretty hard. He said, at what point do you make peace with it and actually move on? At what point do you not feel like you have to carry the sins from your past, and you've finally done enough to justify living in the past, or have you been redeemed by them? So like, at what point do you forgive yourself so that you can live fully in the present and for the future?
Yeah, that gets me right in the throat. We might have to edit this.
Because you have to forgive yourself.
It's hard. I've always wanted to be a mother. And one of the things, I feel like because of my addiction, I did not have children. And I feel like it's because I wasted 10 years of my life. And now it was like, and then because of my recovery, because I was so structured, I wasn't dating. And it was like, before I knew it, I was 38 years old and I was still eating dinner the same night. It just to me, I blame myself a lot, but and there's friendships that I thought would last forever, and the people didn't understand about addiction. And so I had to separate, ways from them, or they separated from me really, because they thought, oh, what a bad, terrible person that she's doing this. And, they took kind of offense to it that I would be high around them. And it wasn't anything against them. I was always high. And I thought I was hiding it well, and I wasn't, but
no, you were not.
I thought I did, but it's
but
hard.
most addicts do. They think nobody can tell, and they just think it's like,
and I went to work I would show up later, not at all, but I would go to work and I would think, God, I'm like so good at my job when I'm high, and I need it to be better at my job, or I was like sick all the time. It just was like a warped thinking, but it's taken me many years to try to forgive myself, because how can you forgive yourself for throwing your life away and throwing friendships away and time with family away? And where would I be without it? But it's those shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And it was not Jeff's fault. It wasn't George's fault. It wasn't my father's fault. It was 100% my fault that I made that choice. But it's just such a baffling disease that there's no way to say well, I wouldn't have become an addict anyway,
Right. And this whole purpose for me putting out this podcast is to help people understand that life is crazy, right? We all have different paths and purposes. And this maybe was part of your purpose, is because you are a success story to now take the rest of your life to help other people who are struggling.
Right.
Even if, in my book, even if I help one person out there, I've succeeded.
Yeah.
Because you take what you've gone through, because there's always purpose in the pain, right? Always. So taking those lessons learned and applying it and helping other people who are struggling.
And not even just people who are struggling, but the people who don't know about addiction. Was I a shitty person? Yeah, I was a real shitty person, but I was still a person. And there were people that treated me like I wasn't. When I was homeless, people could care less. And I wasn't looking for a handout. It was like looking for kindness and understanding. And, that tough love crap, maybe it works on some people. It didn't work for me. And that's not what I needed from family. So just, it's not even just helping people, which of course, if you are listening to this and you are struggling, you are welcome to reach out. By no means am I a professional, but I have been there, done that. I have tried recovery in 15,000 different ways. And I just found a way that was successful for me. And And it's different for everybody. It's different for everyone.
It is. And there are a couple of things I definitely want to touch on that because, and to comment again on Jelly Roll, like he said that people look at delinquent youth in such a negative light, like what they need is discipline. No, what they need is love.
Right.
They're human beings that just need love and care and to show that they do have a future despite their choices in the past. And they do have people that care about them and that it will be there for them no matter what. So going back to the people that treated you poorly when you were homeless or friendships that you thought would last forever that fell away, are you happy that they fell away? Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, like if somebody's not going to stick with you through the good, the bad, and the ugly, do you even want them in your life? Regardless whether they're family or friends.
Yeah, that's a hard question. I can't blame, like I have a girlfriend who I thought, man, we were like two peas in a pod. We spent all the time together. All my Facebook memories from like 15 years ago were with this person. And she just took it very personal and very she was hurt that I was using around her and lying. And she never could come back for that. Can I blame her for that? No. Would I like to still be friends with her? Maybe. I don't know because it's been so long. But I'd like to have a conversation and apologize. But if you don't understand it, then you don't understand it. If you're not willing to understand it, willing to listen, and there's still people in my own family that say it was a choice, it's not like a disease. You chose to use, you chose to relapse. Ooh, my brain was wired different.
Right.
And I had shit going on in my head. And yeah, you're right. Like it was a choice to pick up that first time, but it was out of my control. And it was just, and I'm not saying that as an excuse. It's not an excuse. But it's definitely, it has to be an ongoing recovery. Just like, if you have diabetes, you take care of it every day so that you're not slipping back into illness. The same goes for recovery.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's what was the pivotal changing point for my relationship with my brother was the day I educated myself and knowing that it's a disease and not a choice.
Right.
And then I was able to support him differently and be there for him regardless of what it was that he was doing. So I just showed him love and support, and I'm grateful for that because had I closed the door on our relationship, I would never forgive myself because he's no longer here.
Right.
So I'm grateful that I, number one, educated myself on the disease so that I could understand it a little bit better to know how to support him, even if that was just, hey, I'm here for you. Like there's nothing I could do for his disease and to stop him from using or anything, but I'm grateful that I just showed him that love and he knew it. He knew how much I loved him. And so I can go to sleep at night knowing like I did everything in my power to show him love and to be there for him, and obviously wish he was still here, but I don't have any regrets when it comes to his
and because addiction. You understand, you don't blame yourself.
No, I don't blame myself. I'm sad that I didn't talk to him the night he died because I was mad at him for going out. He, got a phone call from the one loser he used to use with. I'll probably tell this story another day in the podcast, but he said goodbye and I didn't say anything back to him because I knew he was going out with a loser and I was mad at him. So that's the only regret that, I didn't just maybe have a conversation with him before he left, but I can't blame myself for that. Like he was going to go and do that regardless of whether you said
goodbye or not.
Exactly. So I don't blame myself for anything. And I'm grateful that I took the time out to educate myself. So if you do have a loved one out there that's struggling with addiction, my highest recommendation is to educate yourself. And what would your, if you could give advice to someone who loves an addict or a parent who has a child that's an addict, what would your advice be to those individuals?
It's hard because I didn't have parents who took me in and let me shower, gave me a sandwich. I tried, but they, I remember going to my mom's house and saying, I just want to shower and I just need to eat a sandwich. And the door was shut in my face. And to her, that was, I'm not going to enable you. I don't think letting your child in to take a shower and have a sandwich is enabling, in my opinion. I feel like that's supporting. But the only advice I'd say is just love them either from a distance and let them know that you love them, or love them up close, but don't give them anything to fuel their addiction. Don't give them money, don't give them rides, but just give them love. And, I think that makes all the difference in the world. It makes you feel less alone, because I felt very alone in my addiction and in my recovery. I had my dog, and she's the reason why I'm clean today. Swear to God, she was my motivation for saying like, hey, it's not just me. I've got to get a place for my dog. And I just loved her so much. And, she made me feel less lonely. And a lot of people are like, how did you get, long story short, I got this dog when I was homeless, and she didn't know dog food for the first year of her life because she ate out of dumpsters. But she was this cute little pit bull puppy, and I just thought, I need a reason to live. And she gave me a reason to live. And literally, that's why I got the puppy, was because I was so close to death. I did not care about anything, and I needed something to care about because I did not care about myself. And so she gave me that love, and she gave me that purpose. And I guess that would be my advice. If you know someone who's struggling with addiction, just give them love, give them purpose, let them know, like, I would be sad if you weren't here. Mm-hmm. And when you're ready for help, I will give you help. And that's all you can do. You just wait for them to get help.
Yeah. And I think it's so pivotal, not only for people in recovery, but everybody out there, to find something that means more to you than you.
Right.
Right. So find, whether it's a higher power, whether it's something in the universe, whether it's a dog, like find something that means more to you than you mean to you.
Right. And you've been to meetings. Do you know what the first step is?
The first of the
12-step recovery.
Steps?
Yeah. Curious to know if you know what it is.
I knew them and I don't remember now. Because I even went to Al-Anon meetings.
Yeah.
And we have to say them in Al-Anon.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I don't remember.
The gist of it is you give it up to your higher power, right? And so what a lot of people don't know is that higher power does not need to be God.
Nope.
You can make your higher power soccer, right?
Could be T Swift.
Right.
If you're a Swiftie.
And it doesn't mean you're worshiping. It's just like, instead of getting high, I'm going to go play soccer. I'm going to go pray. I'm going to go listen to Taylor Swift. So you're giving up your higher power. You're giving up your addiction to the higher power by saying, like, I can't handle it. I need help. And so someone told me that once in the rooms, and I was like, oh, that makes sense, because
it's a great way to look at it.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't want to believe in God, or don't want to believe that there's something else after death.
Right.
And that's what they get focused on when they say higher power.
Well, and when you've gone through hell and back, it's very difficult to say that. For me, even though I believe in God, it was like, well, where was God? So when you're just coming off the street, or you're just coming out of addiction and you're trying to get into recovery, you're angry, and you're angry at yourself, and you're angry at, if you believe in God, in my experience, because it was like, well, where are you when this happened, when I was homeless? Or where were you when I decided to try this drug? Or where were you when I was 12 and this trauma happened? So it's difficult to give up your addiction to a higher power when you're so angry. And so I think, for me, and just for me alone, having my dog really helped, because it was like, all right, I'm going to take her for a walk. And just for right this minute, instead of using, I'm going to take her for a walk. And then I'll worry about what I'm going to do after I take her for that walk. And sometimes I'd walk her a lot. We'd be on a lot of walks. She'd be like laying on the pavement. I actually have pictures. I should send it so you guys can see her.
Yeah, we'll throw up some photos.
She would just literally lay down on the pavement. You have walked me so much. But it's what kept me clean, and I think she knew it. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Jelly Roll talks about that too. He was like, okay, when times get tough, like, I need to go down to the kitchen and drink a glass of water.
Right.
And if I'm still struggling, then I'll go for a walk, or I'll go stand outside.
Yep.
He's like, and sometimes I just cancel the rest of my entire day and I go back to bed.
Yeah.
He's like, that's the truth that we don't talk about enough.
Right. Because you're not worried about what you're doing in 5 minutes.
No.
You're worried about, how am I going to get through this minute? Because it only takes a minute. When I was driving home and I took that exit, it literally took just a minute for me to get off that exit. Had I had a plan, okay, I'm going to be on the phone. okay, I'm going to listen to my favorite song, so that my mind was focusing on something other than my addiction, other than my disease. That story maybe would have been rewritten, and I wouldn't have gone through another however long months of hell or years of hell. So it's,
Yeah, and Shannon Kaiser talks about it in her book Return to You. She said every emotion lasts about 5 or 6 minutes.
right.
So if you can just push through, and I've really, once I read that, because a lot of times when I get emotional, I stuff it down because I don't want to cry, right?
Right. Oh, I hate crying.
I know.
So weird.
Hate it. But when I'm home and I just let it out, I just let myself ride that wave. It truly is only a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And then you're through it. So like anything, if you can just push through that uncomfortable feeling or emotion,
Yeah,
you can get on the other side of it in a couple minutes.
and now that I could never, I'm like, oh, I just want to get to a month. I just want to get to a year. And now that I'm almost 9 years clean, it's like, I feel like I can do anything because I went through drug sickness, and I can do anything because I was able to overcome, just for today, that the disease of addiction. I mean, I go to work with the flu because it's like, well, I went through drug addiction. I went through drug sickness. So like, it's just the flu. It puts everything in retrospect. It puts everything in perspective. And having that positive mindset, which took me a long time to build. And thanks to Michelle, who was my accountability partner on my goals and positive mindset, because man, it's hard to be positive. It's hard to like think about things you're grateful for when maybe you don't have a lot, but
there was a point where you were very negative.
And
it was like impacting our friendship because I'm like, God, I love you so much, but I was getting brought down by your negativity that I was like, we got to do something here because like, I can't.
Yeah.
I didn't want you to live like that because you're such a fun, beautiful person inside and out that I'm like,
I appreciate
God,
that.
you have so much. And I just want you to be happy.
It's easy to be, I have no teeth. Heroin took my teeth, and it's easy to be like, damn, like, oh God, I really want a freaking steak. But you know what? You got to be grateful for that broccoli cheddar soup because it's banging. You know what I mean? Like, you got to change the perspective. Like, I wear dentures at 38. Shit happens. At least I have dentures,
It's true.
At least I have water to brush my teeth. At least I have,
yeah.
a toothbrush,
There are millions of people in the world that don't even have clean drinking water. Millions of people. That's out of this world. So like my last episode was all about mindset. It's just changing your mindset and turning it into gratitude when you can't find another reason to be happy. If you just look at gratitude, it can change your entire life.
And that helped in early recovery. When I tried the meetings, and meetings are great. The rooms are great. I did them for the first few years. I don't do meetings anymore. But I learned a lot. And through that was like giving up your higher power, giving up your addiction to a higher power, and accountability, saying sorry to people when you do something wrong, taking inventory, like, what is it about you that it's not everybody else, it's you? What about your shit that you have to work on? Take inventory about like what you did in your life, take accountability for it, and then turn it around so that you don't do it again. And one of the things is like just being grateful. And at the end of the day, you rate 3 things that you're grateful for. You had the worst day of your life. You can think of 3 things you're grateful for.
It's true. It really is. But it's like whether you want to make that choice to be grateful and find things to be happy about, or whether you want to wallow in self-pity.
Yeah. And I will say that recovery is a choice. Once you get the drugs out of your body, and once you have made that decision, I'm going to be clean. I'm going to be, I don't want to go back to living addiction. I want to do more than just survive. I want to live. You have to make that choice every morning to do your recovery and to work at it. Surround yourself with positive people, and just know that you got it. Like,
yeah, that was going to be my question. Like, what do you resort to when things get hard? But you pretty much just answered that.
Yeah. And I did things differently. So in my recovery this last time, I never wanted to be on any kind of, methadone program or anything. I had tried, there's a synthetic heroin called Suboxone. And Suboxone for me was not enough, because it was like, you get it once a week, you go to a group and then they send you home, and then you have to be responsible for your, 7 strips of, they're coming like little strips. You had to be responsible for it. For me, it was like, well, I can sell them, or I can shoot them, or I can misuse them and take more at once to get a high. And so that didn't work, and I relapsed to that. But I was so desperate this last time that I was like, well, I've tried everything. I've gone to detox. I've gone to rehab. I've tried cold turkey. I've taken FMLA from work. I've tried Suboxone. I'm just going to try methadone. I don't want to do it. I had a bad idea about it, and it gets into your bones, and, you hear stories, and, it was
Addicted
mainly
to it for the rest of your life.
addicted for it. And it was mainly people in detox saying, well, don't go on methadone. It's, but that was their story, and that was for them. And so I was like, so against it. And I said, well, nothing's working. I'm going to die. I've got to try something different. And so I did. I went on methadone, and it was a very structured program. I had to go every morning at 5:30. I was not allowed to take it home. I had to earn to get take home bottles. And it worked for me, and I was on it for 5 years, and then I wasn't on it, and it was like, getting off of it was such a great feeling that I felt successful in.
I was going to say, I'm so damn proud of you for that, because you weaned yourself down to the point where you were able to go off of it. And I know like how much of a struggle that was, first of all. And secondly, how scary it was to get down to that last dosage and to be like, okay, I'm going to go off of it.
Right. And it was a very little taper, and I did it myself. And I started the taper 1 year in, and it took 4 years, and I did it very slow, and it was difficult. It was hard.
I'm so proud of you. That's huge.
It was, and I think that's why my teeth started falling out, but who knew I didn't brush my teeth when I was using. So, I mean, it could have gotten my bones. It could have just been like, my teeth were like, all right, we're ready to leave. But
we used to buy her toothbrushes at like for Christmas and stuff.
Yeah.
She just never brushed her teeth.
Never.
But I'm damn proud of you. And I remember the counselors like talking you out of weaning yourself down and going off.
Yeah, they were like, don't do it. But I just knew, like, nope, this is what I want. And I was very, I had a great program. I was like really working it. And you know what? One thing that I wanted to mention, if you are thinking about getting clean, get yourself a conservator. Do you know what a conservator is, Michelle?
I sure do.
Talk about it.
Well, you should talk about it, because you went through it. Yeah, it was amazing for you.
So in the state of Connecticut, it was paid for by the state of Connecticut that I got a conservator. So I went to the court and actually signed over my financial rights and said, I am not responsible. I don't know how to pay my bills. I need financial help. And so shout out to Chad. Chad, I hope you're listening. Chad was my conservator for many years. And as an adult in your early 30s, it's kind of embarrassing to get an allowance. But Chad gave me $100.
Whatever works.
Every Monday. I had to go to the office. He gave me $100 every Monday, and that was it. That's all I had to spend all week. He paid my bills for me. If I wanted to buy a new coat, I had to tell him exactly the coat. I had to show him how much it is. Then he would give me the money, and I would give him a receipt. Like, it was like I was a child. And I tell you, I tried so hard, Chad, to play him. But it saved me. It really did, because I had no control over my money. I could not make any financial decisions without his say so. And finally, I think I had Chad for about 6 years. He said, Mara, you don't need me anymore.
That's
and that
amazing.
was a good feeling. That was a good feeling. And I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah, you don't need me anymore. And I still, I still think about him all the time, because he really did. I think
That's
I
great
maybe would have relapsed, but it's a free thing. I mean, you just look into the state of Connecticut. I called here, it's 211. I don't know if that's nationwide, but I called 211, and I said, listen, I need help. And that was their idea, and it helped me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Did I like having an allowance? I did
Hell
not,
no.
but
saved your ass.
You make it work, and you learn again how to like budget your money.
I could use that,
Right. And I don't know if you know this, but $100 is not that much money.
No, for
So
a
I
week?
mean,
No, it's not.
this was quite a few years ago, but it's like you have to consider gas. I'm a smoker, so cigarettes. So not only am I budgeting my money, I'm budgeting my cigarettes, and I'm budgeting like where I'm going to drive. And it was really helpful. So I recommend that to anybody new in recovery, to get a financial advisor or a conservator, because
That's amazing.
yeah. Love you, Chad.
Love you, Chad. One last thing before we end this, but I just want you to have a different perspective on this, right?
Sure.
So you blame yourself for potentially not having kids, right? Because of those years you wasted while you were using.
It's hard for me not to think I could have kids if my life went a different way. Yes.
Right. However, I am 38,
Mhm.
single, no children, want a family.
Right.
And I've never used drugs in my life.
Right. Well,
So you never know which way life is going to take you.
it's fucking mind blowing.
It is
I don't
mind
know if we're
blowing.
allowed to swear in this podcast.
Oh yeah,
Probably
100%
not, but
explicit. No, we're fine.
that does put it in a different perspective. You know, it's like,
so you always can look at your life and be like, fuck, like, had I not done this, I would be somewhere different.
right.
But you just never know where life's going to take you. So I just want you to try to stop blaming yourself, because like,
Yeah.
I don't have those things either.
Right.
And you know what I mean? I wasn't in, recovery, and I've
Do
never
you
used
ever
to.
think if your life went a different way that you would? Like if you say,
No.
like if I chose to not do this or that.
No, because I was with a person for 5 years who I saw a million red flags and I should have walked away from. Had I walked away from him sooner, would I be in a different spot? Would I be married and have kids? Maybe. But I wouldn't have learned the lessons I learned had I not stayed with him that entire time.
Right.
I needed to learn those lessons in my life for myself.
Right.
I needed to learn to trust my gut. That was the biggest lesson I ever learned. So I don't look at my life as, damn it, I should have made better choices. I look at it as, I'm grateful I learned those lessons. Now moving forward, I'll never do that again.
Right.
And life is what it is. And if I'm meant to have kids, I will. And if I'm not, I won't. Like,
and I do look at my life now and think, all right, if I didn't, pick up when I was 25 and start using, or whatever age I was at, maybe I would have had kids, but maybe those kids, that was the control, like back to like when I used to cut, it was all a control thing. It was like the world around you is going, and like you are just so out of control with your emotions and your mind, and you just need something to freaking focus on and numb you. And maybe the kids would have made me spiral out of control too, because it's hard to stick to a schedule with kids.
Right.
I would think.
I would assume so.
I would think you're not eating at Sorrentino's every Tuesday night at 6:00 if you've got kids running around.
Right.
Shout out to Sorrentino's, Manchester.
Well, I love you so damn much. I'm so proud of you.
I love you. Thank you so much for having me. This was great. And like I said, I love talking about recovery. I'm not shy about it. People are surprised, when they see me at work or something, and I talk about it, because you wouldn't think that looking at me like I'm an addict, but excuse me, I think that's the scary part, is that anybody could be an addict. Anyone could be struggling
at any time
with alcoholism, depression, and it's so important to talk about it. And I think maybe
even the pain pill epidemic.
You
have surgery and you get prescribed pain pills.
Think years ago, cut 8 years ago, when I was in the middle of my addiction, it was very shameful, and I don't feel like people talked about it a lot.
No.
It was like I was bad and I was a shitty person, and I didn't feel comfortable because I didn't think people would understand. So bringing awareness to recovery is huge. So important in that too, because as an addict, you just want a voice and you want someone to listen. And sometimes that's all I needed. And who was I going to talk to?
Right.
Who was I going to talk to that wouldn't say, just go get help, just stop. And that's the last thing you want to hear, is you don't want to hear just stop, because you can't, and you've tried, and you wake up every morning trying.
Yeah.
And
I know my mom and I felt for you big time, and tried to be there for you too.
But. Yeah. And that's like, it means more than you'll ever know.
Yeah,
So,
because it can happen to anyone at any moment. And people in recovery are just trying to figure it out, just like the rest of us, right? Like we might not have a full-blown drug addiction, but we are trying to figure life out as well. So like,
Right.
why are we giving people in recovery a hard time when we don't know what the fuck we're doing with our lives either?
Right.
So
Right.
it's like just having more compassion and love for everyone.
Right. And you wouldn't blame a cancer patient for getting cancer because they smoked. You wouldn't blame a diabetes patient for,
Eating
having
cake
diabetes
every
because
day.
they had cake. So, I think if you're listening and you're not an addict and you're trying to understand, I would say please have empathy and don't blame the person, and just love us and try to learn more. And there's so many articles out there and research, and know that, we're people too. And if you're in active addiction right now and you want to stop, or you want someone to talk to, please feel free to contact Michelle or I. Slip right into our DMs.
Oh,
and
there we go.
we will be happy to talk to you. And if you're in recovery, you are a success story, and we're proud of you.
So proud of you. I'm proud of you.
I'm proud of you.
I love you so
Let's
much.
look out.
Oh, I love you so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Anytime, any damn time. I did too. And I think it's a topic that we need to talk about more in
I
a
agree.
positive light.
I agree.
So thank you all so much for tuning in. I can't wait to get this out into the world. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Mara. I'll put her contact info in the show notes. And we just love you guys. And we'll talk soon.
Bye, guys. It was fun.
See ya.